Hello.
Hey, good evening.
Hey, good evening, Jeff. We have one. Looks like quorum. We have Tim Russell,
Yes.
Tom Buzzy, Kristen Young, Deirdre, and myself. So that gives us 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. I did hear from Penny. She wasn't going to make today's meeting, as well as Frank also couldn't make it. So that'd be 7. Who else are we missing then? Oh, Megan. Is Megan on?
Megan is trying to log on right now. She just texted. Oh, there she is. Perfect.
Okay, if we are all here, Elizabeth is on for minutes, right? Okay. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:35. Special meeting, April 2nd, 5:30 p.m., virtual only. This will be a brief meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one
nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, perfect. Next item on the agenda, and really our only item on the agenda, is the 2024-2025 budget. Vote to approve budget for public hearing. Jeff, would you like to give the update, or do you want me to?
I would be more than happy to give a brief update and share my screen just so we have visualization. While Tim, if I'm just going to quickly give the number and the percent while I set that up. Oh, it just popped up. I was going to say, while I set that up, you could set the narrative from Board of Finance meeting on Friday evening on Good Friday if you'd like, and then I'll go into this.
Okay, I'll start there. So on Friday, last Friday, I did attend the Board of Finance meeting. Jeff was on virtually. I don't know if any other members of the board were on. They didn't have the screen running, so I'm not sure if anybody else was there. Brief update from that meeting. Largest topic of discussion was the letter that the Board of Ed had provided to the Board of Finance regarding the excess cost grant and where that was residing in the budget, currently with the town budget, and the vote that they made to keep it in the town budget and to not allow us to put it in the Board of Ed budget. Without getting into all the details, it was a back and forth with a lot of discussion. There are several Board of Finance members who do believe that it should reside in the Board of Ed budget, but nobody motioned at that meeting to relocate it. The sentiment of the meeting was that they still wanted to talk to the town auditors and get their feedback prior to making the decision to move it. So it will stay in the town budget for another budget season. One of the things that the chairwoman of the Board of Finance was very specific on is during the public hearing tomorrow, she would like the Board of Ed, Jeff, as he presents the budget, to specifically refer to the excess cost grant and that, again, what the numbers would be with it and without it on the Board of Ed budget. She asked Dan to do the same thing when he presented the town side. And again, I think she'll have she'll opine on it as well during the public hearing tomorrow. That's just a brief update. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Tom.
So Can you explain why or how, because I wasn't at the meeting, how the Board of Finance can tell us that this money does not belong in our budget? I mean, it'd be like me saying, well, let's take 10% of the revenue from the car tax and stick it in our budget, right? It just doesn't, you can't do it. It's not our money. So I don't understand, just because someone doesn't understand the statute, which I read seems very clear, that you can't do that.
Yeah, there's a school of thought that came up several times, whether I tried to correct it or not, is that they're reading the statute as if, call it this year, we have or call it this current year. The projection is $82,000. So if there's an overage of the $82,000, then they have to write a check to the Board of Ed. They're just, again, it's semantics in the way that it sounds. It's an excess cost grant. And I told them several times that the projection that is being made is not a guarantee. It is the excess cost. So the 130 that we're currently projecting, or Jeff has done the calculations on, which is 70% of what the calculation would tell us, is the excess cost that we get from the state, and that the state says you need to deliver it to the Board of Ed. To answer your question, Tom, I have no idea. I mean, when you listened to the meeting and you listened to Chairwoman Guilfoyle and you listened to at least one other on the board, really said it simply that, the statute says it belongs in the Board of Ed budget. The Board of Ed takes the risk if we don't get that money returned to us, where, again, one of the thought processes right now, we don't have the risk, which, that's only the downside risk, right? So if there's an upside, we also don't get that benefit either. Why no one will motion and make that call, I don't know. I think our only recourse is to further challenge it. And to further challenge it almost gets to a point that it gets litigious. And I don't know any other way other than it's not going to happen before tomorrow's public hearing. And it's always been that way, right? That's really what everybody looks. It's always been that way. This is the way it's been done since we started getting the ECJ. So we're looking to change it now, and they didn't have enough time to react to it. That's all I can, kind of give you what I gathered from the meeting. Jeff, I don't know if you had anything in addition to that.
No, those are essentially it. They, the Board of Finance wavered it back and forth. They considered it. They asked further questions. The first selectman, Jerem, also asked further questions to try to attain clarity, but ultimately they ended at they need more time with the auditors. But you did a good job summarizing all of that.
So, Tom, I see your hand still raised.
So I just had one. So, all right. So it's not going to go on our budget. Is it in the town side budget then?
Yes.
So if they get a check from the state, which is how this works, right? They get a check for whatever number it ends up being. We don't know what that number is, but eventually that number gets figured out and gets sent to the town. And by statute, that money should come to us within 30 days.
Correct.
So that's not going to happen regardless of where the money stands.
Not this budget season, from what I understand. I don't know if they can make an interim move. Then, I mean, again, the net to the town doesn't change, right? So if it resides in our budget or the town budget to the town, it doesn't change the answer to them for the taxes and for the increase or decrease or whatever it might be with taxes next year. But it really is, as I told the Board of Finance, one, it's we're not following what the statute says. And then secondly, as the letter stated, there's an optic that says that the Board of Ed continues to spend without regard to the taxpayers, where again, our special education costs are increasing. There's an offsetting grant to help that, but it's not being reflected. So the story is not being told to the community. And I even said it in the meeting that there were 8 people sitting in the room and 10 people online. these 18 to 20 people are the only people out of 7,000 to 8,000 in our town that understand what truly is happening here. So again, to them, making it public at the town hearing, which you've all, or at least, I have been, and I know several of others that are on this call have been at town hearings, you don't get a big outpouring of the community there either. So those are the two things that I had brought to the table. And at the end of the day, I mean, I can't force it, right? We can't force it without going another route that, again, is not good for the taxpayers of New Hartford. Deirdre, you have your hand raised?
Well, you're not going to like what I have to say, so maybe I should put it back down.
No, I mean, again, please voice your opinion.
I mean, I think it sounds super sketchy, and like that means the money's already allocated or going to someone or somebody's pocketbook. It's super sketchy. The law is pretty clear about where the money should reside, and I just like I said at the board meeting last week, I think it's absolutely ridiculous to say this is how we've always done it, so let's just continue to do this. Like, that's absolute utter madness. And I don't take what you're saying for an answer, because it just seems absolutely ludicrous to me. It just seems ludicrous. Like I just have. So I would say, right, like we could push forward and say no and fight for this, right, and run the risk of a political nightmare, right, and then make our lives a lot harder moving forward, right? So I guess what you're saying is we choose the lesser of the evils and just take it just take it and say, okay, that's cool. I guess we're just going to go with this. So we save face and we keep good relationships, but it just seems like the only people that are hurting are children in our schools and our teachers, which are so in sore need of this money. We need it in our budget.
So just to that point, if I could, so they're not removing cost from our budget, right? So the cost is still there, which again, the cost is what's driving what's on our screen, this 5.8% increase. With the 130,000 grant reimbursement reflected in our budget, that 5.8 becomes 4.42, if I remember correctly, right, Jeff? 4.42?
Yes, spot on.
Right. So that increase becomes 4.42. So that's really the difference we're looking at. And it's also important, and the Board of Finance has brought it up, and again, they have a point, that's taken the whole 130, where the increase from last year to this year is the 82 to 130,000. So if that grant reimbursement sat in our budget last year and for the previous years, as the statute said, our percent increase would be approximately 4.9, correct, Jeff?
Yes, about 4.8 or 4.9, yes.
All right, so that 4.8, 4.9 in comparison to the 5.8 is really what, as I would look at, our special ed costs have increased in their required costs. Without that grant reimbursement shown, we're reporting to our community a 1% or 1 point higher increased budget than we really should be, because the town is taking that 1% and applying it to unrelated costs. Right, the costs sit here, but they have the reimbursement. So, just for example, they're taking 1%, or the delta, call it $50,000, and applying it to Parks and Rec. So it's just not being reflected per the statute, which again, the optic is we're at a 5.8 when we're truly at a 4.8, 4.9. But again, they're not taking money out of special ed, and they're not taking money away from the children of New Hartford. It's just being reflected inaccurately. So at this point, at this point, we have a public hearing tomorrow. The Board of Finance has already motioned at their end to send the budget with a 5.8 from the Board of Ed to town hearing. The Board of Ed just has never motioned to do the same, to send a revised budget with the revised numbers you see on the screen and the revised percentage after we made the $100,000 cut at our last meeting. And I guess the only saving grace for all of us in this budget season is that they are open to have a full disclosure discussion at the town hearing tomorrow about this. But I understand it in the way that the numbers change. I think, as described, I think that most, if not all of us on this call understand it. But to describe this to a community member who's coming in cold, it may be hard to understand and comprehend. But Jeff's gonna have to do his best, right, Jeff?
Sir, yes, sir.
Any further questions on this before Jeff presents the numbers? Seeing no hands raised or anybody coming off mute, Jeff, do you want to go through the numbers, please?
Sure. So the finalized number that we will need to operate for the 24-25 school year will be $9,964,530.59, which is a $546,480.27 increase, or a 5.8 increase to operate our schools next school year.
Kristen has her hand raised. You know what? If we could, on this, now that it's been presented, could I get a motion to approve the 2024-2025 budget at 9.964, 530.59?
I will motion to approve the budget as presented with the 9.964 million at the 5.8% increase year over year.
Motion by Kristen. Can we get a second? Seeing no second, I'll second for discussion.
The question that I had to move forward with discussion was, do we have any updates on the kindergarten registration numbers for next year?
Yeah, currently we sit at 37 for incoming kindergartners. Nothing's changed since our last meeting.
And can you remind, this version of the budget includes just 3 kindergarten sections, correct? I'm losing
Yes.
track of the other versions. Okay.
Yes, Kristen. Yep.
Tim, you have your hand raised?
Yeah. Jeff, how does this compare to early enrollment for kindergarten last year in the final numbers? Do you know?
Almost at the same exact place.
And then what were the class sizes this past year, each of them?
15 approximately average. We have 4 sections of approximately 15. That's the average, plus or minus 1 or 2, depending on location in the swing line. It's about where we're at.
So we should be looking at least 8 or 10 more kids enrolling.
Such a hard guess to make, but could happen. Yeah. Could have 8, could have 10, on average, we're about 47 over the course of, as far back as I can look.
Okay. And
we just got blown up big time, with the 62. So go ahead, sir.
Okay. No, and I just, obviously everybody knows that I'm pretty against getting rid of a regular ed teacher. Is there any way that we can incentivize retirement for somebody who has maybe a year left or something like that, and give them an early retirement with their benefits so that we don't have to remove this teacher?
That's a great question. I think Frank Rodenberg brought it up last time, and without additional support from the Board of Finance, I don't have any packages like that to offer to folks. I like the idea. I don't think that's a possibility right now. And again, it would take a lot of strategic planning, financial planning, and then support and backing from the Board of Finance to make that happen.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it.
So just with that, Tim, if I could, again, we talked about this at the Board of Finance as well, right? With the 37 current enrollment, on average over the last 5 years, our normal or our more typical enrollment at the end of the season or start of the school year is around 47, 48 students in kindergarten. Our policy states 18 max per teacher. So we currently, with 37 enrolled, have the room for an additional 17 before our policy would require an additional section be added. Right. And one of the things, again, they did ask quite a bit about why we proposed 4 sections, and the superintendent proposed 4 sections to hedge against what happened last year. There's no indications with birth certificates right now that would substantiate the need for 4 sections.
Yeah, understood. I feel like it's going to be a problem in the long run where maybe it's going to be difficult to get teachers to want to be employed here. There's already a shortage of teachers people that want to be teachers. And, if every other year we're cutting a teacher and then trying to rehire, I think it's going to create some serious issues in the long run.
Good, valid point. Tom, you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. So do we have to Tim's point, Tim Russell's point, do we have a plan if we needed to keep that section active? Are there other, I know we talked about some other cuts during our review of the budget. There were maybe some other opportunities. I think I kind of agree with Tim Russell that, that we don't want to, set a trend as, being up and down when we, since the whole Bakerville school thing, we've had consistently strong kindergarten classes, and to assume this year will be any different, I think maybe a problem. I think we should be prepared. Maybe Jeff already is prepared to move money around elsewhere and keep that section.
So within our current budget, it would be extremely challenging, outside of any other unannounced retirements or anything else that would be a surprise savings, if you will. So, I mean, without seeing where we're going to end up a little bit closer, because obviously as we get closer to the beginning of next school year, you have people registering up until literally the day before, which makes it difficult. And that would be an additional means of having to go back to the Board of Finance. I can't project that is going to happen right now, obviously. So I don't have the ability to hire a kindergarten teacher within this budget outside of a very early on education, maybe step 1 or step 2 teacher, maybe. And that's with some other savings realized throughout here. I don't have that number projected in my mind right now, in terms of where I would even try to pull that from, because again, most of these things are contractually negotiated and already encumbered, if you will, into the next year. As you think about it, to come up with $50,000 or $40,000, depending on the level of experienced teacher that we're hiring, could cause some issue. It may turn into something where we try to make that happen within, and then see where we're at the end of next year. And then if we have any overages, that we have to again seek the Board of Finance's support for that.
I'm not sure what kind of Board of Finance support we're going to get. That's my concern.
Yeah, I hear you.
It seems like we got to figure this out now, or we're going to be stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm just surprised at right now, but that's where we are.
Yeah, same.
Well, Jeff, I mean, one of the things, again, correct me if I'm wrong, right, is that between now and next year, there are some contingencies that are in there, right, for negotiations. Those should be
Correct.
set up to see where we land with those
Correct.
negotiations. Health insurance, right, isn't locked in. We're on a projection currently. That could go up or down, unfortunately. We'll have to see where that lands.
Yep.
But as time moves on, some other things that we have in there for projections should become solidified,
Yep.
which would inform what available funds we might have. And when we get to that bridge to cross, if we need that fourth section, we would have to go to the Board of Finance equipped with anything that has been, again, solidified before this need came about.
Right. Yep, that's correct. Just like any move-ins or any other significantly impactful costs that come to the Board of Education, that is our only line to go to, whether it's hopeful or not, Tom Buzzy. I understand what you're saying completely.
Go ahead, Kristen.
If we don't if we don't move this budget to the Board of Finance or to the public hearing tomorrow, like what actually happens?
It's going to go anyhow. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to piggyback off Kristen, like, what if we send back a proposal that is slightly different and it's a little bit higher? They can just, like, the Board of Finance could say, they could have come to us and said, we want you to cut $300,000, and we just have to cut every single possible thing and just meet whatever expectation it is, whether it's reasonable or not.
Unfortunately, we've gone through this in previous years, and that is the case. They have the authority to tell us to cut, and we have an obligation to do so. I forget how many years ago this was. Tom, you and I were both on the board at that time, but we were, again, I don't know all the details behind it and how the town regulations and bylaws work, but they do have the ability to tell us to cut.
Thank you.
And again, I mean, right now, the meeting that did happen that last week, it has already removed the $100,000 from the budget that was motioned and approved by the board members present. So today is really the motion and approval to move this to town hearing without the 130, because the 130 had always been in the number. So customary is for us to move it to to town hearing, similar to the Board of Finance. Board of Finance did do that on Friday. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion by Kristen to move the 2024-2025 budget valued at $9,964,530.59, which is an increase of $546,480.27, or a 5.8% increase. I think we should do this by roll call. So we'll start again. I'm going to go on my screen, left to right. Deirdre? You're on mute, Deirdre.
I mean, we don't really have a choice, right? It sounds like we just need a vote. We have no choice in the matter. So I guess I'm voting because I have no choice. I guess I'm voting yes.
Thank you. Tim?
I'm going to vote no.
Kristen?
Yes.
Megan?
No.
Tom?
Yes.
And myself, and I'm going to vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. Okay, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Tom, second.
Seconded.
By Kristen. All those in favor? Thank you all. Please, if you can, make it tomorrow, whether, at the town hall, senior center. There is the town hearing at, I think it's 6 p.m., right, Jeff?
I believe that's the time that it starts. Hold on, let me double check. Sorry, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. at the town hall up in the senior center. So
Yep,
if you
it'll be
can,
Region 7 first, followed by New Hartford, then the town, and then we'll circle back to New Hartford for our security grant as well.
yeah, that's a good point. So again, they did in the agenda pick up security grant. Will be a separate discussion outside of budgets because that's being funded through excess cost.
General fund.
General fund, I'm sorry.
I got you. It's okay.
All right. So if you can make it, please do what you can to be there.
Hey, I have a question before. Is anybody going tomorrow?
I will be there.
Is there any way that anyone could drive me? I'm not allowed to drive.
I can do it.
So just pick me up at my house. Okay, I'll message you after. Okay. Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Good night.
Back.